When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.
We're back once again, Neal, back in the studio.
Master Keys Podcast, episode 15. Neal, Andreino, and Chandler.
Yep. We just recorded an emergency episode yesterday, so we're still coming down off that buzz.
Yeah, we were a little bit fired up due to some changes in the proposed rules.
Yeah.
We may have cast some ballots based on what we were told, and somehow they changed that last minute.
I was misled by a politician.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Can't believe that happened. Never would have thought it. Who would have thunk?
But yeah, things are still kind of settling in on that. I think there's going to be more stuff come out about it. There's going to be more ramifications, both good and bad. I think I've calmed down a little bit from the blood pressure was high yesterday.
You were a little angry yesterday.
I don't know if angry was the word.
I was waving my hands and I was like, all right, next topic. We got to move on to the next topic.
Yeah.
You slammed the desk a few times, but
yeah, I'm just an impassioned speaker.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
So I mean, it's important to get fired up about stuff sometimes.
No, it is good to care about these things, and if you don't voice your opinion, then realistically nothing will ever change.
Yeah.
So I respect that. But what are we doing today? We have a special guest with us today.
Yeah. We've got a guest from out west who's going to talk a little bit about different market conditions, because we've been very fortunate here to have a strong seller's market. And I suppose that's fortunate or unfortunate depending on what side of the margin you're on there.
Yeah.
But we've even talked about the idea of the market slowing down. And I don't know, what are you seeing there right now, moment by moment here? We're coming to the end of October.
I see the market's still strong, but I think the biggest concern we're facing right now is disgustingly low levels of inventory.
Yeah.
Like crazy low, like a 1 month inventory. And it's causing prices just continue to go nuts.
Yeah.
I think it would be a little softer if we actually had the inventory.
Yeah, there was a little rush there, seems, with in September, where all of a sudden inventory ticked up and there were less individuals coming from out of province. So all of a sudden buyers had that moment where they could be a little more, I don't know, they had a bit more options. They could be
more selective.
Yeah, a bit more selective. The one they all selected would go crazy. Yeah. They would have 4 homes to choose from, and they all chose the same one, and it would still go crazy. But the others would maybe, I don't want to say slide through the cracks, but trade for perhaps lower than they would have earlier in the year.
Reasonable money.
Yeah, and then that supply just once again dried up. So
completely. And the immigration and migration resumed at an unprecedented level.
Yeah.
Well, just the numbers. The numbers show.
Yeah.
In that Q2, it was kind of quiet, and then Q3 came on, and it was just we did quadruple. In Q2, we had 2,000 from other provinces, and then 8,000 in Q3.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense because Q2 was the height of our
COVID
lockdown, third lockdown. I don't know. We lock stuff down here.
We like to lock down.
We like to lock it down in Nova Scotia.
Yeah. So anyways, we have quite a market. Out west, it's a little different depending on where you're at. And so we are bringing on Matt Pfeifer, who goes by the Bald Prairie Real Estate Agent.
Yeah.
And so he's on with us today.
Thanks very much, guys, for having me on.
Yeah. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself and kind of, well, we kind of connected with you because of your online presence, which is really strong, and these market updates across the country, which I found myself kind of checking in on, because often our market now is no longer in a vacuum. It was in a vacuum for years, and now people are asking about these other areas. So that's kind of how I came across you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a real estate agent from LePage in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I started the YouTube channel. I called it Bald Prairie Real Estate as a play on the fact that I have no hair, and I'm from Saskatchewan. I just thought it was a funny little play on the words there. And my wife was the one who kind of said, hey, do this. It'd be something you'd be good at. And I mean, my first videos were terrible, but it's been fun. And I started originally just doing Regina market updates. And I went, well, let's talk about a few other cities. And so I started phoning people from across the country and tell me about your market. And now I've got national updates. We got 11 different markets I cover, and I do them each and every single month. And it's been really fun. And yeah, that's how we connected, was you guys reaching out to me. And it's awesome to see that people are checking it out from across the country.
Yeah, totally. And we encourage people to check Matt out, and his production value is light years ahead of ours. We joke we want to be like Matt when we grow up, and who knows, 5 years from now when
big time,
when Neal's fully bald, we'll be the bald East
I
Coast
was going to say, give me a couple of years, it'll be fine. We can do the receding East Coast realtor for now.
Well, if you check out my first videos, the production vet quality is pretty terrible. I started originally shooting on an iPhone, so that's where I came from.
Well, people come for the content, right? So, speaking of which, Neal, you've got some topics here just to kind of check us in, and I think it's going to be great for people here to learn a little bit about how things are going across the country, but then also take some lessons to maybe apply here.
Yeah, exactly. So I think my objective with today, Matt, and just for everyone listening, is to kind of discuss what the difference is when the market's not like what we have. We've almost forget now because it's been almost 2.5, 3 years of strong market growth. It's been 2 years of like ridiculous market growth and about 3 to 4 of like consistent growth. And so people are starting to forget what it means. And there's been so many new people who are just entering, like young buyers and people that this is all they know. So they kind of assume that this is what the market is. So I think today what we're going to try and do is chat with Matt and get his take on the market that he's dealt with, where it's been like you said to me, Matt, it's been flatlined for a lot of years, and there's even been years where you've seen people, they buy a house and then they go to make their transition, and as unfortunate as it is, they might have to sell at a slightly lower price point or the equivalent price point to what they paid, and so that's something we want to talk about. So I guess right off the hop, like we talked about really quick here, our inventory level right now just got quoted at 1.7 months. And I don't know if you have the exact number there for yourself, but what are you seeing right now? And you said things are ticking up there now, but what are you seeing on the inventory side of things and pricing?
Yeah, so we basically in 2012, we peaked out. And then we saw a significant correction down, about 25% citywide in terms of
25?
prices. So fairly substantial. And we'll break into that a little more. 25% was our citywide benchmark price change.
Damn.
Negative 25%. But yeah, we can break into that a little later. In terms of where we're at market right now, we finally, in about the end of 2019, started to kind of hit a little bit of an upswing. We're right now in the city of Regina about 3.5 months of inventory, which for us is very low.
Yeah.
There's many months where you're 6, 7, 8 months of inventory sitting out there. So to be in that position is very different for us for the last few years. It is segmented though, single family homes. And for us, price points of about 350 to 500 is still really hot and only about a month or two of inventory, whereas other segments, it's more like 4 or 5.
So tell me, I always think of Halifax as really unique because its main driving force is the fact that there's a peninsula surrounded by water on 3 sides. So real estate values there are always really, really strong. And then there's the fact that we've got the military, we've got the universities, we've got the hospitals, we've got big government, public sector. What are kind of the driving forces in your market?
So Regina is a government town too, provincial capital and a lot of federal government jobs, RCMP barracks there, but we are very heavily commodity driven. So obviously the agriculture market, everybody thinks about that. We have a significant oil market as well. Potash is another one, which is used as a fertilizer. We also have a significant energy market in uranium as well. And agriculture isn't just wheat crops as well. We do a ton of pulse crops, so lentils, that type of stuff. It's something like a third of the world's lentil supply just comes out of Saskatchewan alone.
Get those lentils.
Lentils from Saskatchewan? Really?
Yeah, if you're looking for lentils, most likely they're coming from Saskatchewan.
I like lentils.
This is why I've always worried about some of these other markets when people ask me about Halifax, boom, bust, and why did we never go through any big swings until recently? Like we were always like this. And it was because we were driven primarily by things that, boom or bust, whatever's going on in maybe the private economy, the commodities, like we weren't super affected because those hospitals aren't going anywhere, those universities aren't going anywhere, and so on. But the 2012, was that like petroleum based?
A whole bunch of things kind of hit us at the same time. So 2012, obviously, oil, that was basically the peak of the oil market. And then the other big export that we have is potash. And there is a kind of a Canadian conglomerate that, for the most part, acts as a cartel in the country here and exports potash. But also overseas, there was a Russian/Eastern Bloc cartel that fell apart. And all of a sudden, they started flooding the market, and that tanked our potash prices. So we got hit with those two. And then we got hit hard with lentil exports. We lost the biggest export market we have, which is India. In 2015, there was a little bit of a political snafu that really hurt our exports. They put massive tariffs on. So we kind of got kicked a few times in a row with our commodity market.
Man. That's so interesting to me because there was the fisheries that drove the economy here for a long time, and there was mining and things like that, and then we slowly got away from that. Like we're
very government reliant at this point now, which is like, that's why I think we've always just kind of paced inflation, because it's almost like government hands out inflation-based raises. Yep. And our other big industries like So we have shipbuilding here.
Yeah, and we had a spike in
But-
2012 because we got this big contract and people thought they were going to get rich, but it wasn't that big of a thing.
No, but it is one of the bigger private employers here.
Yep.
And it's in the subsidiaries to the
Yep.
shipbuilding. But realistically, the contracts are government hoarded. So it kind of is another government
public
base.
money, yep.
It's basically public money that's funding that entire operation.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's always kind of kept things
Oh my gosh, I should say that our
kosher.
our container and our shipping, our port is a huge part of our business
Very
too,
true.
right? And then with all those things, because they've come together, we became kind of the commerce capital of Atlantic Canada. And then most recently this year, I don't know what, like in 2019, we started to come up with, because of improved immigration and like lower boring rates, and then of course the pandemic hit and stuff. What do you attribute your last little rise to?
Yeah, I
you
was
said
gonna
since
say, what's
2019?
made that change now that's causing things to...
A big part of it is just we finally hit bottom. I think the economic conditions that were hurting us, oil basically bottomed out in prices and is slowly, outside of recently, has been kind of slowly recovering, or people just got used to the new normal on that. We have had some strong years of agriculture. Pulse crops, again, same thing. We've kind of stabilized there. Potash, like all of those things that got kicked in, down the road quite a bit or beat up on prices, we kind of just hit that new bottom price and it's slowly been working its way up. So people have got used to that. That was a big difference there. So just, okay, if we're dealing with $60, oil, now we know how to deal with $60 oil. That's been the big
Right.
thing.
You learn to stabilize at that point. Now, and you're saying that bottom price. What is like your market average right now in Regina for price points?
So composite benchmark price for everything put all together is about $275. But if you want to break
Okay.
it out to all the individuals, I've got it right here. So single family is about
Yeah.
$280. Townhouses is about $230, and apartments about $180 there for that.
So
Wow.
when you're talking to buyers in a market like this, because I can imagine it's hard conversation with the sellers, depending on you're up, you're down, you're sideways, whatever. But when we're talking to a buyer in this situation, what do you tell them about? Is this an opportunity? Do you view the idea of home ownership differently? Because when you were able to say, hey, listen, you're going to put along at your 3% a year, it's easy to explain to a buyer the merits of purchasing. But what about in a market like yours? What can you tell them right now?
Well, right now is different than the conversation I was having 2 years ago when prices were declining, and that was a completely different conversation. But, now it's okay, we're finally through that ugly rut that we had where prices were declining, and that was, you were pretty apprehensive about buying maybe, and you were making the decision to buy because it was a lifestyle choice versus an investment choice. Now it's okay, I'm going to buy a house, and we're finally in a position where the house is going to appreciate, or it sure looks like that's the direction things are going.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess because I mean now like it's so easy now. Everyone wants to get in because everybody knows somebody that's made a bunch of money on their home, or the idea everyone's like the idea of renting is so stupid because of our rental rates going to where they are. I guess the sentiment would have been very different for you guys, where people probably would have seen a lot more merit. Because the other thing is rental rates are probably a lot more reasonable. Like I don't know, what would you say an average clean let's say a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom would go for in a decent location, not hard of downtown, but also not in a grade C neighborhood.
So like a newer townhouse, 2010 type thing, 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom in a pretty good neighborhood. 1,300 would be a giveaway on it. 1,500, 1,600 would be kind of probably the higher end of that. Utilities would be on top. So that's a pretty nice place.
Yeah, that's not. That's actually not. I thought it was maybe a little cheaper than, to be honest. That I guess for as an investor, you're getting a reasonable return.
I guess when you consider that our average house price in Halifax proper is probably double what you're saying for your benchmark composite there. The rents kind of bear like your rents actually might be closer to home ownership prices than ours.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because people buy here a bit on an upswing projection. Like we're having a difficult time now, more so telling buyers that, hey, this may not be going to pull back, at least not in the near future. We have some buyers who are saying, well, I don't want to get in now. Maybe I should wait till this thing goes down in price. I'm kind of like, I don't really know when that's going to happen. So these are some of the conversations we're having. What do you tell people, even buyers or sellers, when things are falling and, you're trying to catch a falling knife here?
When we were going through that declining market, it was tougher as an agent. Okay, now you got to wrap your head around, instead of, you guys are in that get them the darn house, because if you don't get them that one, we got to go find another one. Whereas for us, it was, I got to get these guys as good a deal as I possibly can, price point wise. And then also talking, okay, don't just buy the first house you find type of thing. You want to look for houses that are in good neighborhoods, that have something that's desirable about it. Maybe you're back in a park, you're close to schools, you're on a quiet crescent, you know, that type of thing. Because even in a declining market, those houses still sell well, and they sell for better prices. So like I said, we dropped 25%. If you look at different areas, the core of our city, which is a rougher high crime neighborhood, the prices there easily dropped 50%. Whereas higher end neighborhoods maybe dropped 8%. So big difference there in terms of what happened. So if you were buying in a nicer neighborhood, not on the busy street, that type of thing, you definitely got impacted a lot less.
So did suburban sprawl fare better or worse during this? Like, could the cookie cutter, they're all the same, but they're new?
We got overloaded in condos more than anything else. Single family, we were still high there, especially 2 stories. But the condo market was what got absolutely hammered, pretty much everywhere. And where they got hit the worst was anything that was an apartment rental converted to condos, 1960s era, 1970s era stuff for us. Those got all converted during the boom. People made a pile of money. I remember when I first got in the business, I had a guy, we were selling one. 175 was the sale price, and he was so mad because I am giving this darn thing away. He was just pissed off even having to accept that offer at 175. And today that same place is 105. So those guys got absolutely beat up.
Do you see a lot of foreclosures in that then? Like, is there a lot of bank repo homes and stuff?
Yes. So Saskatchewan actually still sits the highest foreclosure rate in Canada. We're about 0.8% foreclosure rate. It is heavily skewed, though, to Prince Albert and Estevan, 0.8%.
Okay.
1 in every 100.
So that's our, and then of that, typically, that's delinquency rate, not foreclosure rate. And then of that, about 50% actually end up in foreclosure. But like I said, it's skewed heavily to Prince Albert and the Estevan areas. Prince Albert, you've got a heavy logging sector there and forestry. And then obviously Estevan is heavy oil influence there. So those 2 sectors got hit really hard. Regina, Saskatoon, not nearly as much. But in terms of what is that in real numbers, 0.8%, it's about 1,000 properties.
How the hell can anyone build a new property at these price points?
Do they do is there new construction? Are there new homes?
New construction got crushed when things went sideways. There was a point I was joking that the builders, it was like the Oprah Winfrey show, because you could get everything. You were getting your deck, your fence, your landscape. There was literally at one point they were giving away cars. I'm not even kidding. And a CMHC came in and said, you got to stop doing that. You can't give away a car with the purchase of a house. It can be a draw, but it can't be just buy a car, buy a house, get a car. So it was really tough as an agent to compete against that, because these new houses were going for everything with it included. So as a buyer, you're going, well, heck, why would I buy the used house when I could buy the brand new one and get a car?
So
here, the builders now won't even build the friggin' house. Now they sell you the contract, and they're
my God.
6 months later, we're not going to build it, and we need an extra $50,000. And you're like, I'm sorry, what?
So Neal hasn't been in the game quite as long, right? So Neal's enjoyed just like this trajectory of the market. I've been in a little bit longer, where there was the 2007 was a big year, and then 8 and 9 and even 10 and 11 were like kind of slow, and then 2012 you had a good year, then there's a little pullback. There's been that kind of 5-year ebb and flow, and there was times where the builders here they weren't giving away cars, but they were giving $5,000 closing bonuses, extra commissions to agents who sold them, maybe a TV, things like that. And now, you can't change a light bulb.
My first new construction deal, I got them to throw in this like $10,000 appliance package, all this like upgraded hardwood staircase. But that was right when I started, like and that was right before things went nuts. Yeah. And then my most recent new construction deal, the builder offered us $10,000 to buy the contract back.
Wow.
Not as a bonus, but he wants the contract back because he wants to resell the house for another $100,000.
Yeah. So obviously now you're starting to recover, and that's awesome. Glad to hear it. How does this, when the market collapses like that, are like, how do you even rent a place? Because at some point, it's got to be cheaper to buy these homes, even if they're depreciating in value, than to rent. Like, what's the rental market like there?
We're about 7.5%-8% vacancy rate right now. It's obviously fairly high, and compared to other markets, they think that's insanity. We're starting to kind of dig out of that hole slowly because new construction got shut down, and specifically condos, they basically halted construction on that. So we took time to absorb that inventory. There is, I would call it a bit of a shadow inventory. It's existed for quite a while where guys were stuck with those places. They're renting them out and maybe not making much on them or anything, but at least they weren't bleeding horribly on them. And then as prices have come up, you start seeing those things pop on the market because guys want to get out of them. So we did expect that, even when things started to pick up here, we would have more listings come on market because there was guys that were trying to get out but just couldn't at the time. There was a point where you're looking at going, I can rent for X amount and I can buy for X amount, and those are pretty close. And a lot of people did make that decision. It even still exists today in terms of it's pretty close in terms of cost to purchase something versus cost to rent something.
Yeah.
And what are things like in the rest of the province?
So Saskatoon is a little bit of a bellwether, and that is because it's a bigger center, a little bit more, I would call it entrepreneurial. You've got that less of the government influence, more of the professional type of experience there. Yeah, you've got the university, which is a massive driver there. University of Saskatchewan's about 35 to 40,000 students in a town of 325,000 people, so pretty big influence there.
Yeah,
and it's got basically every program under the sun, whether you want to go veterinary, medicine, basic arts, business, it covers everything essentially there. Agriculture, one of the only agriculture institutions in the country, I think, actually. So they kind of got everything. You can go and do everything there. And so they're a driver. Prince Albert is been in a rut for, it seems like, forever. That'd be the third biggest city. Estevan and Weyburn, which are oil producing areas, those guys went through a massive boom. Prices went nuts. Everything went crazy. And then pretty much the carpet got pulled off underneath them, and they're still trying to recover there. And then you've got a lot of smaller centers beyond that.
How has this changed your outlook when you see these other areas of the country doing so well? Because obviously you do these nationwide market updates and you see these markets doing this.
Yep.
What are you saying in your own head to yourself when you see that?
Boy, it's awesome to live in Saskatchewan where I can live a whole lot cheaper than everywhere else can.
Yeah, true. That's what we said here too.
We said that for a while here.
That was the concept. That's what we always said here too. Now everyone's like, I don't know if it's cheaper anymore. Do you have a market? Like, I find here there's a very big market of young people getting into the rental market, like a really strong demand for rental units to own them.
Yeah, I mean,
do you have is there like what, like, I guess
do people own or occupy there? Like, is that a thing? Like, I want to have a duplex, I want a house hack, or people like, what houses are so cheap?
Is that going on?
Yes, it does. But again, with the cost of buying being as attractive as it is, most people that are buying are going, I can afford to buy this. So let's take a mid-1960s to mid-70s bungalow, 1,000 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double detached garage. That's going to go for $300 to $350. At $350 would be kind of on the higher end of a price point for that. Well, that's a nice house in a nice neighborhood. And, again, $15,000 down-ish to buy that thing. Your payments today, $1,400 a month type of thing. So that starts getting pretty attractive. So why you don't really need to house hack necessarily when you can do that.
Yeah, and if there is vacancy issues and stuff like that, anyways, like, it's probably like here again. It seems like house hacking just like, I put a basement apartment in. It's like a guaranteed 100% you're having income there. But like,
and here it's bred out of necessity to some degree.
Yeah, and that's what it's become. Because nobody, exactly. When I first started, nobody talked about buying a bungalow and throwing a basement apartment in. Now every single young couple I have, they buy a house and like, we gotta throw a basement apartment in here because we paid.
Yeah, Airbnb has been a thing here. It sounds like what's going on there. You probably don't have as much of an Airbnb situation. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's still there, no doubt about it. Regina wouldn't be quite as tourism-driven as Saskatoon is. Saskatoon definitely has a little bit more of that. Bigger center, a little bit more to do, definitely a more attractive, pretty city. Saskatoon's beautiful. And then, of course, the university market there.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to say, do you also, on that same note of like a lot of young guys getting into it. Is there also some bigger player landlords that are like consistently buying, building, going on still, even though that the market's like that? Is there companies that are really still fairly aggressive in continuing to grow their portfolios?
Yeah, starting to now. You're starting to see the investors come back to the market. You know, you've got your bigger guys like your Boardwalks and stuff like that. But there's also a lot of local guys that have got a lot more doors than I think people would expect.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, what does like a 15 unit B grade building trade for per door? Like, what's a good deal or an okay deal?
You know what? I'd have to refer. I got a buddy of mine, and I should have had those numbers offhand, but I don't.
No worries. Yeah, no worries. I mean, here, it changes so fast, to be honest. Like, well, at least here it's been nuts.
So when you're seeing a correction or even an upswing like that, I mean, you talked 50% in some areas or what have you, or a 25% drop. Over what kind of period of time are you talking?
So we went 2012. Basically, we peaked, and 2019 we dropped. So about 7 to 8 years there. So that correction happened over that time frame. It wasn't overnight. It was just a continual decline for 8 years. And I was lucky enough. That's exactly when I started the business. Was 2012. So I got to ride the wave all the way down.
Yeah.
That sounds a little better though. When he first said the 25%, in my head, I was like, one night your house is 400,000. The next morning it's 300,000.
Yeah, not overnight.
But when you think about that 25% loss against the overall national inflation, like it's actually more than a 25% real money swing.
Yeah.
When you think about people's life savings and say you owned the same house for those 7 years and you were nearing retirement, you've just really got a hit in the stomach.
How does that work? Are people upside down in their houses then?
Yep. I know a lot of people that had to write checks to walk away from houses.
Sorry,
that
I'm
was
just
a
gonna
real
have a
thing.
meltdown over here.
Yeah.
Just give me one quick second.
I saw that reaction. Guys that would have to write checks to walk away, write checks to just cover, commissions and closing costs because there's nothing left for equity in the house.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about when we had Igor on, our mortgage broker buddy, and remember the days when you could go zero down and big CMHC premiums, and you're starting at 106%, right, financing, and then you drop 25 points out of the market. Whew.
Are you allowed to do 5% down and all that stuff still out there to CMHC?
How do these loans get insured?
Yeah, 5%.
Like,
standard doesn't change. You can do 5% down. So there were people that you put your 5% down, pay your 4% CMHC premium, and you own a grand total of 1% of the house, and you start day one, and all of a sudden if it drops in value, you're taking a beating.
Drip.
Oh my God. I'm just completely broken over here. Like,
so I said kind of you kind of joked about how you like that at least it's affordable to live there. But jokes aside, do you have some anxiety when you look at these other markets and say, oh, they don't know what's coming? I mean, you've seen these other markets though that have seemed to be steadily increasing with no end in sight. What do you think about that as someone who observes these things across the board?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously if you went down like we did, we were one of the worst hit in the country. Us in Alberta probably got beat up the worst, and so I know what it's like. Now, we also have to look at what happened economically to create that situation. It's not just like all of a sudden prices are going to change overnight because it went up, it has to come down. There has to be some underlying economic condition, and you look at the job losses, like I think in Alberta, there was 100,000 job losses there. It was staggering what happened in Saskatchewan. Wouldn't have been near that big just because we're smaller, but proportionately probably very similar in terms of job losses. We took a beating economically. You lose 5,000 jobs in Ontario and the government freaks out. You lose 100,000 in Alberta and nobody thinks about it. So, we took an absolute beating there on that. Unemployment skyrocketed. It was tough. It was very tough.
So what is the outlook then towards, well, two things. What are governments trying to do to bring business to the area? And two, how does that impact the way you think about migration? Both losing young people, but also bringing in new people. Because here, we love, we were fighting for years to get some net positive migration, especially with respect to our young people leaving for Alberta or leaving for northern Saskatchewan. And now they've all come back, a lot of times with a lot of money. But also we're our government has put a real push on bringing in immigrants from outside of the country, and it's been great for our economy. It's been great for business, but it must be a different outlook in your market.
Yeah, they've tried to diversify excuse me here, sorry, in Saskatchewan, we definitely do not rely as much on oil as Alberta does. It's a much smaller footprint. Agriculture is a much bigger, more important thing for us. You add in, the energy sector, whether it's oil and gas, but also, like I said, uranium is big, potash is big. So they've tried to diversify commodity-wise that way, which has helped. It was just unfortunate that basically every commodity turned negative at about the same time. And that's what really hurt us.
Yeah.
Whereas before it had been, if oil was down, agriculture or potash were up, and they typically tended to balance each other out. But the reason it went through the boom is they all went up at the same time. I mean, I think our government was doing, budgets on $100 or $25 a barrel for oil, and all of a sudden it shot up to $125. Potash, same thing, quadrupled in value or something like that. So you hit kind of the grand slam all at one time. It does some pretty crazy things for your economy.
Are you seeing, in general, like on your net migration, are you seeing an inward overall, or
I believe,
and I don't mean immigration, just migration within Canada?
Interprovincial, we're losing.
Dodge a little bit.
I believe we're losing.
Yeah.
We are gaining though because of international migration.
And that was going to be my next thing. So then, on the immigration front, are you guys getting a fair number of people coming in? I guess we have what's called the APP here, the Atlantic Pilot Program, which gives them an expedited ability to receive a PR, permanent residence, and it's done wonders for us, and that's been basically one of our big drivers. I say Canada's in the business of people. We aren't necessarily a major producer of anything on a global scale. Yeah. Not to be terrible, downplaying it, but in general,
lentils.
True, the
We're
lentils.
big on lentils. No, we have a lot of commodity stuff.
We do have a lot of commodities, but I don't think we necessarily harvest them as hard as a lot of other countries do, and as much as we necessarily could. So I always say we a big part of our thing is immigration. And so are you seeing that there as well? I don't know. Is there programs and stuff to help get people there and get the PR and those items?
There is a provincial body for immigration. I'm forgetting what the name of it is. There is a push to bring in. We do have shortages, pretty much like the rest of the country, in a lot of different sectors. We're starting to see, I know in the city here, a couple of things that are big. There's 3 canola crushing plants. So for canola oil, 3 of them that they're starting building on. That's going to be good, as well as the Jansen potash mine up by Saskatoon, which was like a $5 billion project, massive, monstrous project. So we are starting to see, again, some investment in the commodity sector kind of across the board. I know guys working in the oil sector are seeing, going back to work and more hours available and stuff like that. So we're starting to see that come back.
Interesting.
Right but you just kind of high level.
Yep.
What do you see in Alberta? I know that there's a big swing in Alberta depending on where you go, but market at a glance, what are you seeing in your neighbor there?
So oil recovery, how long this lasts. Obviously, we're seeing oil prices go through the roof as we're recording this, and gas prices, it's about $1 million to fill up your truck right now, but that will stabilize at some point. Shaking his
when
head.
Oil went down, I was like, man, I should just put a bunch of money in oil, and I didn't. Neal did. 2 hands up for Neal. Oh, man, I had all these people come to me like, hey, so I think we might get a second property. I'm like, you bastard, you bought into oil. So it's doing well in Alberta?
They're, again, similar position to we are. They have slowly dug themselves out of a hole. I would still be a little bit more concerned because they do have still a heavy reliance on oil, but they're almost more diversified and not more diversified than Saskatchewan. We're very diversified in commodities. They're more diversified in other sectors like your tech, like tourism, stuff like that we don't have quite as much of. So they have a heavy reliance on oil, but a little bit more diversified for the rest of it. For us, if commodity prices are doing well, we're going to do fine. Calgary, they're doing pretty well. They got beat up. Edmonton, government town, a lot more stable than Calgary is.
Yeah.
Obviously up north in your oil areas, your Athabasca, oil sands areas, those places really, really got beat up badly. But the cities themselves are doing better.
Yeah, I think Fort Mac's a bit of an upswing. I know a few of my friends just moved there, and they said it's the same kind of thing. They moved in right when things bottomed out, and which was about maybe 6-8 months ago, almost a year ago now, which is probably even a little more. But it's coming back around because they said a lot of companies are wanting to get back on the train, and they're shipping people up, and so people are buying houses. Yeah, we're seeing it slowly come back.
Do you guys do individuals between your provinces look at substitution between, hey, I could live in Alberta, I could live in Saskatchewan, and make these moves for an affordable life alternative? Or I guess the other question is for feeling that there's greener pastures somewhere else?
There was a long period of time where, okay, kid, you want to go make your fortune and go out west to Alberta? And there was the sad joke, the last person leaves Saskatchewan, please turn out the lights. That has definitely changed. During our boom...
That was like, half the population of Cape Breton was in Alberta. That was the joke as well. Yeah.
There was a time, though, I remember, I'm going to say probably about 8 or 9 years ago, that there was billboards in Calgary saying that if you lived in Regina, you'd be home by now, because obviously a much smaller center, much shorter commute. There's actually billboards out advertising for basically for Saskatchewan and moving there. So that was always entertaining to see that. Much smaller cities, better prices, that type of stuff.
We should throw one of those up in Toronto.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everyone goes to Toronto and they're probably driving for an hour and a half, and you're like, if you were in Halifax,
Yeah.
you would be home 10 times over.
You drive an hour and a half in Regina and you're in a different city.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you see in these markets, and again, we're kind of leaning on you because obviously you're specifically an expert in your area, but you also do these market check-ins across the board. Do you see this idea of maybe the second go around when these markets hit an upswing, people are a little bit more reserved? Maybe, I don't want to say learned a lesson last time or something like that. Or is it just new round of buyers starting fresh and it just seems to be the same process?
Yeah, I know the biggest challenge for me was when the market shifted, and it shifted very quickly, was buyers having the mindset it's still a buyer's market when it wasn't. That was a really tough adjustment. And it was tough for the buyers, and it was tough for me as an agent to go, hey, it's no longer get the best deal, it's get the house, because it's going to be gone if you don't. So that was tough. I do think there are enough people, because it was not that long ago that the prices were declining, that they still remember that. So I think there is still some hesitancy, but even in bad markets, good houses sell. So I tell my buyers, if you're paying a high price or a top dollar for a house, but it's a good house in good neighborhood, that doesn't worry me as much as a buyer's agent, because I know that even in a bad market, if we got to get it sold, it's going to sell better than the busy one across from the strip mall that's got the bus stop in front of it type of thing.
So I think that's something that we probably should even be more focused on here is really paying attention to some of the smaller details. I think a lot of that's getting forgotten now, where people are just like, I need a house. And sometimes we look past it's not on the greatest street, or your lot's half the size of your neighbors because of whatever way, and you're backing onto what's about to be an apartment building, and they're so hell-bent on getting the house. And like, well, that one's sold for $350 and I'm on the same street and it's effectively the same house, then I'll pay $350. But now it's all good, and because you can just keep turning them over, no problem.
It's a challenge.
If we slow down, then like you're saying, these finer details of like where your house sits on a street, what your yard's like what type of school you have.
Yeah.
A lot of those things might actually end up playing a much bigger factor than they are now, because everyone seems to be willing to just stomach anything.
Yeah. Does it have one of those one or two intangibles that in a down market people are still gonna be drawn towards?
And does it have a buyer for it? Like, buy the house that has a wide selection of people that will look for that. The unique stuff is super cool, but how many people are going to pay for that in the future? And if you're in a position where maybe population's decreasing or prices are decreasing, the house that has that wider appeal with those awesome intangibles, that's a lot more saleable than the unique house that you overpaid for.
Neal's excited about something. Go ahead.
You know what? You know where I learned this, Matt? Yeah, 100%. He's 100% right. When I started selling cars, I love sports cars.
Yeah.
So the first few cars that I bought were all sports cars to resell, and I couldn't friggin' sell them. And I was like, what the frigg's going on?
I was like, what? Wasn't everyone like this two-door red Mercedes? Like,
why does everybody not want this car? And I'm like, I want this car badly. And then I realized, like, wait a second, the traffic isn't made up of two-door Mustangs. It's four-door, like, Corollas. Like, that's...
Yeah.
And SUVs, exactly. Yeah. And so it's like, you got to buy what people actually... You got to sell what people actually want, or buy what people actually want. So, anyways, just to double down on what you said there, it's funny you say that.
Are there any markets that are also are there any markets that are struggling that we maybe wouldn't have thought of, or that you don't hear about across the country that you know of that are kind of down a little bit? Because everything we hear, like, we're just consumed in our own little market of up, and you still hear that Toronto's relatively strong and that Vancouver is up and all these things. What else? What other highlights would you say? I mean, people can watch your full analyses as they come out. But other highlights that you got?
Yeah, everybody talks about Vancouver, Toronto, Halifax, Montreal, Ottawa. I think that's, and the country is consumed with those prices. As soon as you start stepping outside of there, the picture dramatically changes. I think, for example, if you take the benchmark price in Canada, which is, I don't know, $750,000, take out Toronto, Vancouver, pretend they don't exist, I think it drops 200 grand. Overnight type of thing.
I believe it. Yeah.
Really?
Yes. They're
Really?
skewing that pretty big, man.
I
Huge
know.
sample
I guess
size
the huge
and
size,
big outliers.
Yeah. TO
right?
is probably the biggest
Yeah.
one. It's such a big city.
Yeah, we talked a bit about that
Holy
because the CMHC ratings came out and they viewed us as high risk here. And I think our average price point was, do you recall?
470 range, let's say?
Yeah,
460?
for somewhere upper 400s.
Yeah.
But nationwide, we still had so much to go relative to the average. But you're saying that average, of course, is mightily skewed by those two markets.
Yeah, you take those out.
They skewed it that hard.
Oh, sorry, what's that?
Sorry, go ahead. I just didn't realize that it was that dramatic.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
massive. Like when I do my market updates, okay, so let's Vancouver, Toronto, million plus is your benchmark price there.
Yeah.
You go to Calgary, 460. Go to Edmonton, 380, something like that. Saskatoon.
Calgary and Edmonton are that cheap?
That's the greater Edmonton area. Inside the cities, probably
Really?
about 400-ish, 4.25.
No way.
Saskatoon, 3.25.
We are getting-
Regina, 275.
We are in a bubble. Oh, shit.
we are getting pricey
Time
here.
to list everything. I'm over it.
The prairies are different.
okay.
The prairies are, I would say, your most affordable options in Canada. Again, outside of your small centers, but I'm talking major cities, and I do consider Calgary, Edmonton, major centers. Obviously, huge.
Yeah, those
Those
major
are
cities,
huge
for
cities.
sure.
Winnipeg's a bigger city,
Bigger than us.
and obviously Regina, Saskatoon are smaller. But the prairies in general are cost effective. Interior BC is still pretty warm there, but there are some pockets of really good stuff in the interior. Northern Ontario, obviously, the prices are different there. Manitoba, same type of thing. Manitoba is, although they've been, and especially Winnipeg has been picking up a lot, they still have been kind of a consistent plot along, not like skyrocketing type trajectories.
Right.
This is a kind of a shift, but do you see people doing, you're familiar with the Burr method? You heard that? Yeah. So, Chandler's laughing at that. He loves the acronym.
Yeah.
But do you see people doing that? Do you see guys doing that out there?
Yep, we do. It's been tougher because I've always believed Burr relies on appreciating prices. And if you don't have
Yeah.
appreciating
It does, yeah.
prices at pretty good numbers, Burr doesn't work. And so
Well, you need a gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and if for us, obviously declining market, it's never going to work. Appreciating, if we've had a good run and we're still only up about 8% from last year, which was up about 7% from the year before. So we've made up about half of the losses that we had. But if you're only seeing 1%, 2%, 3%, which 2% a year was pretty typical in Regina for the longest time, we were very consistent. Again, government town, basically
That's good.
peg it to inflation.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot tougher to burr something when you don't have those crazy price increases to go along with it.
It also sounds like your market is a little bit more condensed. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Like here, we've got such a wide spread between multi-million dollar properties and still things at the lower end of our market, which is probably around 200,000. And for years, it was
15
hard.
minutes apart.
Yeah. And it was hard to flip properties for a while because the absolute train wreck of a property would be 160 in a little area, say, and then you could get a beautiful home for 270. So it's like, how could you really make that model work? And it's only when our market started to gap, like, okay, the property needing a complete overhaul might be 225, but then the nice home could yield 450.
Yeah.
Then you start to be able to do it. Like, do you have that gap? It doesn't sound like you have that large of a gap between
No.
properties.
So for us, if you take from $200,000 to $400,000, that's probably 60 to 70% of all our sales in our city in that little $200,000 window. Now, there's a big difference between $200,000 and $400,000, but like you said, a house in the in the hood in a rough area of town in Regina, you're 150, but and I know that maybe sounds silly, but 300 buys you a darn nice house in the city. So again, there's not everybody that has the budget for 300, and
Yeah,
I understand that. That being said, in my mind, I've always
Yeah, you
felt
can't do a renovation.
300's a achievable price point for somebody who has a good stable job. A couple, that's an absolute no problem for them. You know, you got two people in the public sector, that's going to be easy for them to get into. So, you know, you can buy some awfully good houses, you know, plus or minus 50 grand off of 300 basically. So yeah, there's not that, I guess, that spread like you talk about. And we don't have a ton of super high end, like houses, like sales over 800,000. You might see 50 in a busy year, maybe. And we sell 3,000 houses in a year.
I don't know how many houses we sell here a year, but I thought it said like 2 years ago, 2018 maybe, we only sold 9 houses over $1 million. That seems way off.
No, that's got to be in a really given area.
Maybe it was a month.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of $1 million sales because there's a site here, Nova Scotia, that would at the end of the year would list the highest sales of the year, like the top 10.
It wasn't crazy.
Yeah, it wasn't. I'm sort of used to see more of those numbers, just over $1 million, 1.3, 1.4. Last couple of years, it's going to be like, all right, well, this place 6.5, and you know, and down from there. Like I don't think the top 10 would be under like 1.6 this year.
Oh no, it wouldn't be under 2 million.
Wouldn't be under 2 million. Yeah.
No chance. There's a like Shannon said, the way our geography works in this city, it forces the prices in these good neighborhoods to go nuts because there's just absolutely no option because you're surrounded by water, right? Like where we have the peninsula, the very deepest point of the peninsula is priced the highest, and so you just can't build unless you were to like fill in the ocean. To kind of bring that price down, and so those homes just continue to get stupider and stupider. There's a lot.
And then they
there's a
float
lot
the
for
periphery.
sale for $4 million. A single family home lot, it's 4.2 million.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but then, like you
Beautiful
said,
lot,
with a very nice
beautiful lot.
But,
if anyone wants to see the lot, just let me know. We'll walk it.
but and then literally 15 minutes away, you can find yourself a house probably for like 250, 300.
Yeah,
I guess now
depends on traffic too. Getting off the peninsula can be a bit tricky.
Yeah.
In traffic times.
So I'm gonna keep yanking back to the rental side of things just because I'm like completely blown away, and that's where my headspace tends to go. For the big landlords, like how, like, are there landlords, like, do they do more stuff to attract clientele? Like I was saying to someone yesterday, like, it's funny here now, you can literally do anything. Like, you don't have to do anything special for the tenants, and you will consistently fill your units. But some of our big landlords have always put in place like community-based things. Like I can say, well, Killam, for example, who's the biggest landlord here, they are very community-oriented. In all of their buildings, they have get-togethers, and they offer all these perks, and they have Killam cards that offer perks around the city and all that.
Vita does that as well. Like, they give you a rebate if you buy your first car, if you get a new job, if you get into university and stuff like that. It's super cool, actually.
And people are not really paying much attention to it right now, because right now it's more the desperation of getting a unit, and or if you're a landlord, you don't need to do it because there's so many people that desperately need a unit that it doesn't matter. But again, in a market where there is a bit of vacancy, are you seeing like those kind of things that take place, and that's what's kind of allowing the bigger maybe or the better landlords to grow and maintain a lower average vacancy across their board?
We, I would say, are still very dominated by the local landlord. Your ma and pa type operations. We don't have a ton of massive commercial style enterprises, with rentals. There's the boardwalks, those exist. That's a big one out here. But a lot of stuff is a lot quieter and maybe less sophisticated is the best word to use there, because you've got local guys that are doing that. But there'd be a local guy, you had no idea that all of a sudden, holy crap, that guy's got 150 doors or 200 doors, and you had no idea.
There's a couple of guys like that still operating around town here.
So we got a lot of that.
But you have to incentivize someone to rent. You'd think you'd have to really try to.
Even when our vacancy was like 3 or 4%, they were giving out 3 months rent and crap.
Yeah, you do see stuff like that. A lot of it's competing on price for sure. There's a lot of that going on. But you do see stuff, giveaways and things like that. 1 month free, 2 months free. So there is that stuff going on. But I think more of it's been competing on price. The guys that had nice places, attractive to younger, millennial types, those still did well as long as they showed well. Clean, light, nice, well, bright, lit up, painted. You make it look good, you will get money for it. If you let it, in squalor and it looks like crap and it's in a bad neighborhood, well, you either got to account for it on price or expect a high turnover rate and lower vacancy or higher vacancy. Sorry.
Yeah, that makes sense. On that same note, on the rental side, Do you guys ever, like, since it's such a hot topic here, is there any sort of, I'm going to say affordable housing, but on the rental side of things, is there any issues there? Because like you're saying, your rents aren't actually that too far off of ours. Is there just like a ton of availability too in the $700 a month? Like if you need a unit for $700 a month, can you easily just pull it up on Kijiji or whatever the platform is and find yourself a unit?
Or like,
is there
what is cheap rent there? Is there
a 1 bedroom in, I'd call it a pretty mediocre type place, $700 definitely you can find that, versus 2 bedroom you're probably talking about $900. So that stuff exists all day long. Not as good at areas for sure, but it definitely exists, on the open market. Yeah. The stuff I'm talking about where, $1,200 to $1,500, $1,300, $600, that is better, much better neighborhoods, top end neighborhoods and fairly new stuff. Yeah. So that's a little bit of the higher end of the market, I guess I'd call it, without going into the extreme stuff.
Okay, so yeah, you pretty much never like it felt like kind of a stupid question, but I just want to see if based on the way the inventory was laid out, if there just wasn't stuff necessarily on that. Because I noticed the other thing I've noticed when I was looking through units in Alberta, the apartments all sell at $200 a door, just
Alberta?
across the board.
It's $200 a door.
Just $200 a door. Doesn't matter where. Like it's just all of them are $200 a door. And so I was like, does it just mean everyone's just kind of renting for like $1,200-$1,300 and there's not really a $700 market? Do you know what I mean? Even though they do have a little bit of vacancy.
There's definitely stuff that's cheaper here. $150, $120. I've seen that stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Do you know, and this kind of put you on the spot here, did you know kind of the cap rates that CMHC is sort of reporting for Regina?
I should have looked it up. It was on my list and I don't know what it is offhand.
No worries. I just kind of be curious.
Oh, good.
We're obviously leaning on you for information about the West Coast or the prairies, rather. What are you hearing about our market here out east? And do you have any questions about what's going on out here?
I've heard it's utter insanity. And when I look at your sales in a month, 600 sales in a month and 350 or 400 active listings, I just go, that's crazy. Like a big month for us is 400 sales. That's a monster month for us. And again, we're a smaller market. So I always find that interesting and just how crazy. And looking at your inventory, I've been watching it basically dropping, essentially halving every single year for the last couple of years. And I mean, if you're watching it, you probably saw that coming.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, people are like, oh my gosh, 2020 was so crazy. And I'm like, yeah, for those in the know, 2019 was crazy. And 2018 was pretty damn good too. So we had a situation where it was like, all right, normally this time of year we'd have 4,000 listings. And it's like, oh, we only have 3,000. That's like, oh, we only have 2,500. Oh, we only have 1,500. And then we got down to a point at the initial pandemic where it was like, we had 750 homes available in a given area that just 5 years previously, we'd have like 4,000. And that is a massive swing. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. There's the demographics, the aging of our population, like the baby boomers going through. There's the pandemic, there were the rates and all these things. But it was a perfect storm that for someone like yourself who's kept tabs on it, it was brewing. It was bubbling here, and then it was expedited by the pandemic and everything that came with it. So,
and I think you could see that in a few markets in Canada, that it was coming. And if you were watching inventory, I mean, I'll call myself a simplistic guy. I'm a supply and demand, and I think that drives everything. You can talk all day long about what's driving it and, what are the problems and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if there are not enough houses to buy, for people that want to buy them, like, you look at places, you get 30 offers on it. Well, 29 other people want to buy that house. So if you don't have that, guess what's going to happen to prices? And like your market, you could see the freight train coming down the tracks a few years ago. Montreal, same thing. I mean, they got half the listings they'd normally have. Would you say that 4,000 listings you had, was that a inventory heavy situation, or is that your balance?
That was probably a little heavy at the time. Now, we've grown a lot in population since then, too, right? I mean, we were adding 20,000 people a year. Well, I think netting about 12 the last couple of years. At the time, that was certainly heavy. I think, gosh, what could we support right now?
We could easily support that. I mean, I think pretty close to it at least.
Yeah.
We're at a point now where it's like a house per neighborhood that goes up for sale, and it's just
ridiculous. I have a listing right now that we've had somewhere around 33 showings in 3 days. And when we sat down to look at it, which we initially looked at it in September or the end of September, and we were planning for October. So, well, here's the deal. You live in the most sought-after neighborhood, arguably, in town, which is North End Halifax. And in the month of September, there have been only 9 homes for sale in this area. 5 of them are all sold. They all sold over asking. 2 of them are conditional, and 2 of them are active. So, and we're better than the ones that are active. So when we come to market, we will literally be the only game in town, and you have a nice house. So we have 30-plus showings in a 3-day window, and we'll get offers on it. But yeah, it was kind of bubbling. Like, there were times where I said this to an agent today. We're not that far removed from the average days on market being 97 days, where if you were doing really, really well, you'd be over 97% of ask price. But that's all realtors know. It's like we used to have to reduce the price 3 times in order to get that 97. So we're like 97% of the ask price after we dropped the ask price by 5%. We're not that far removed from a more balanced market. But it's certainly happened quickly because the gains that you're talking, losses that you're talking, we've realized that in about 18 months, which has really maybe made it seem just that much crazier.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It happened very, very, very fast here, and I guess it's now there's a concern of it flipping back, but yeah. I can't see it here because in Halifax they are so slow. I don't know if they're so slow, but it's just in general, like all the things are pointing like they're just not creating the inventory. So this is something that Chandler and I really got into yesterday, but we are not filling the inventory. So we're telling you all of these things, and there's really not that much new construction taking place to fill that void.
And again, our underlying economic drivers, you talked a lot about yours and how it's heavily resource-based. Ours are pretty much recession resistant. Nothing's recession proof. But again, those hospitals aren't going to close. The government's not going to close.
Yeah.
The shipping industry is the one that's going to be really interesting when international trade might get a little dicey in supply chains and things like that.
Yeah.
But we've got some really strong underlying anchors, I guess, to our market here, but it has been a lot in a short period of time. I think we have 2 questions before we wrap up.
Yep.
My first question is, what is a Rough Rider?
You know what? That is one of those things where, I don't know if people followed CFL. There were at one time 2 Rough Rider teams. There was the Saskatchewan Rough Riders,
Ottawa,
which is 1 word, and the Ottawa Rough Riders, which was 2 words. And outside of where that comes from, I honestly don't know. The team's been around for over 100 years. Now if you do not cheer for the Rough Riders, it's very tough to live in this province. My wife, who's originally from Ontario, when she moved originally to Prince Albert, she thought it was the Rough Raiders and very quickly learned that was incorrect. And then when we met, I'm a big football guy, and she had no choice but to accept that football is a fantastic sport, and I'm going to live, bleed, die Rough Riders and the sport.
Well, what's that helmet in the background?
What's that?
What's the helmet in the background?
Oh, the helmet? That is the University of Saskatchewan. That's why I went to university and played there.
Yeah, that's what I thought. The other Huskies.
Nice. Yes.
St. Mary's Huskies.
The Green Dogs and the Sea Dogs.
I think we met in the Vanier one year, and it was like Huskies versus Huskies.
Yep, it did happen.
No,
I think so. Yeah. I think St. Mary's won.
I think so. That would have been about the mid-90s. I think
sure.
that was roughly.
Early 2000s, I think. Somewhere around there.
Yeah, it could have been there too, yeah.
Yeah. Second question is something we like to talk about a lot here is just what success means to you. I mean, obviously you've built a really great business, both selling, and then you've got this online presence, if you will, and you've got a team and you're coaching and all these things. But we do these endeavors because we're entrepreneurial and because we enjoy them, but also this idea of success. So what does success mean for you?
Success business-wise, this is going to be fun. For me, it's going to sound almost a little weird. I am less motivated by the bottom line and more motivated by my lifestyle in terms of if I have accomplished all the things I want to get me what I want in my lifestyle, I'm happy with that. And so that means for me, spending time with my family. I love coaching football, so being able to do that. But I also really enjoy helping people in the business in terms of working with buyers is fun. It's a lot of work, but it is a lot of fun. And then, of course, listings in a hot market are really fun. In a not so hot market, or a fun challenge, we'll call it that. And then the channel, honestly, this is growing way more than I ever expected it to. I figured nobody would want to watch some generic bald guy talk about real estate, and yet for some reason people do. And my terrible jokes people seem to like for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh, that's what I forgot. Damn it, I forgot at the beginning. We were supposed to start this with a terrible joke. You're going to send us out on a terrible joke. But sorry, continue.
Okay, well, I'll give you one to finish it off when we get to that point that I just got from a client. So, but yeah, you know, and the channel, it's just, I just want to have people understand the market, understand what the buying process is like. I've always found it when I meet with buyers, and you guys see the same thing. They're going, where do I start? What do I do? And they're doing their research online, and they don't know like what is good, what is bad. And you just put in Google, what do I need to know to buy a house? Well, there's so much difference between markets. What is common practice for you
100%.
guys is not common practice for us. You know, like I'm sure you guys are probably still writing some conditional offers, but not nearly as many. Whereas us, that's standard. You're writing full conditional offers. You know, Toronto, that would be laughable to write a conditional offer on a place. So, you know, talking about those nuances in the market and teaching people, that's just what I want to do, is educate people so we can give them as much information and they feel like an informed consumer when they're going through that process.
I like it. I like that answer a lot. I feel like you're also achieving that. I think you're achieving the success that you want.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of why we started this. I mean, way back when the first episode's like, well, why are we doing this? Like, you know, to genuinely try to help people and exchange ideas and hopefully learn a bit. And, you know, the one thing about real estate is everyone loves to talk about it. It's really pertinent to everyone's life, and it can be a lot of fun, even though it's stressful and all that stuff. But it's good. Yeah. So do you have a good joke to send us out on?
Yeah, so you got to hit us with the joke
So
now.
the one I got just a couple of days ago from a client, they actually emailed me. They saw my channel, then emailed me, and this is how they started their email. And they said, what does the British real estate agent like most? And the answer was his proper tea.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, you got one?
I don't
Neil doesn't
have one. No.
All Neil's jokes are bad.
Yeah, exactly.
My kid's got one, and he goes, "Where do you find a no-legged dog? Right where you left him. Right where you left him.
Oh,
There you go. There you
no.
go. Courtesy of Randy. I think that's probably our time. Unless Neil has any last thoughts.
Now I'm going to have to give you a joke. Give me a second.
Okay.
I had one sent to me as well the other day, and I just tried to avoid it. But now,
Is it
we're
PG?
going low.
Or,
We're
yeah?
going low here, so it's gonna happen.
Matt, what's a typical day look like with you where you've got so much on the go? While Neil looks this up.
I have it up.
okay. So
Go ahead.
my normal day would be up in the morning. Usually my dog goes to school actually 2 days a week, so that's often when I'm taking her to school. My wife works weird hours, so that's always tough. I try to get in the morning done, stuff for the channel, touching base on my listings, buyers, that time, looking what's out there. Afternoons is often meeting with people. Evenings or early evenings, I coach from 4 to 6, and then after that, it's showing all night long. Like tonight, I've got supposed to have team photos at 4 o'clock. I got 5 o'clock showings, 7 o'clock showings, 8 o'clock writing out an offer. That's pretty typical for me.
That's the life, man.
That is
That's
the life.
Yeah, we
Fun
can relate.
times.
That's one thing that isn't different across the
Yeah,
country.
it never changes.
Is that if you want to be a realtor, that is the life. All right, Neil, wrap us
All right,
up here.
We're
What do
gonna
you
wrap
got?
it up with this badass joke. If you get attacked by a bunch of clowns, what do you do?
Ooh, get attacked from. I don't know, man. What do you do?
You go after the juggler. The juggler.
Oh, I like it.
There you go.
Good. That's good.
So,
All right.
anyways,
Thanks again, Matt. Check out Matt's handle.
Bald Prairie Real Estate.
Yeah, we'll link it as well. And much success to you, buddy. I hope things continue to go well out there.
I appreciate you having me on. It's been
Maybe
a lot
we'll
of fun.
check in. We'll check in with you again sometime and see sort of what's changed.
How the
since
markets
then.
have changed.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Kind of not a recap, but a revisit on this and see what's different.
Absolutely.
Love
Absolutely.
it. Matt, what's your Instagram handle too? I don't know if I have that. What was that?
I am Matthew_Pfeifer_realtor on that one, I believe it is, or it's real estate. I can't remember. I'll have to send it to you. Actually, I don't even know my
we'll
Instagram
track it
handle
down.
is. That's
We'll tag
bad.
you. Yeah.
Perfect. All good. So thanks again for coming on. And thanks everyone for tuning in. If you have some questions, let us know. Leave us a comment, and we'll touch back. We'll touch back on them. Sorry.
Perfect. All right. Thanks again, man.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Matt.
Cheers.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.